straight out of Compton. NPR's Elizabeth Blair has our report.
Wanda is a massive corporation in China. Its business includes huge shopping centers, theaters, theme parks, and luxury hotels. A few years ago, it bought AMC, the second largest theater chain in the U.S. Now it owns some Hollywood blockbusters. The Dark Knight trilogy, the Hangover movies, Legendary's remake of Godzilla did very well in China.
Recall him.
There have been a number of deals between Chinese investors and Hollywood companies. U.S. producer Janet Yang, whose credits include The Joy Luck Club and The People vs. Larry Flynt, says China and Hollywood have been dating for a while.
They do make great bedfellows in the sense that China has what Hollywood wants and Hollywood has what China wants.
Meaning China has the money and the biggest market in the world, and Hollywood knows how to make movies.
One of the things they want is really more developed skills. I mean, Hollywood is really the most experienced player in terms of content creation. And so China has a really deep hunger to be a player on the global cultural stage.
But like any marriage, it could face some bumps. Among them, movies Wanda produces through Legendary will likely have to go through Chinese censors. Wanda's owner, Wang Jianlin, is reportedly well connected with the Chinese government. Elizabeth Blair, NPR News.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. Starbucks said today it plans to open 500 new stores in China this year, and it said it will eventually do more business in China than in the United States. The announcement underscores the potential of China's vast consumer market. NPR's Jim Zarroli reports the Chinese government sees untapping that potential as key to solving many of its economic problems.
For years, China has poured money into big capital projects, factories and ports and railroads. Now, says Christopher Balding of Peking University, it has become overbuilt.
You hear stories and read articles about airports that have been built all over China, and they get 2 flights a day. And you hear stories like this across all types of industries.
There's simply not enough demand for all the roads and factories China has, and with global growth slowing, that's not going to change anytime soon. So a lot of economists say to keep the economy growing, demand must come from inside. Chinese consumers have to spend more. That's not easy. For one thing, living in China is expensive. The social safety net is skimpy, and things such as healthcare and retirement aren't subsidized the way they are in the West, says Scott Kennedy of the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
Chinese spend a lot of their money on healthcare and on education, on housing. And so there's not a lot of extra disposable income for what would drive consumption, say, in the United States and other richer countries.
And the Chinese system sometimes makes a bad situation worse. Laws block people who move to new cities from putting their children in public schools. There are restrictions on where people can invest their money. So Chinese people end up putting a lot of money in state-owned banks where the returns are feeble, says Linda Lim of the University of Michigan.
So people rationally at an individual level save a lot for their retirement, for the housing, for the health care, for their children's education.
Beijing has acknowledged the system needs to change, but almost anything it does invites a painful trade-off. Opening up banks to foreign competition means less money will flow into state-owned banks, many of which already have a lot of bad debt. Spending more money on social services means less money to prop up state-owned businesses, and that could mean layoffs. Lim says Beijing is trying to implement reforms without doing too much damage to entrenched interests with government connections.
So that's a very difficult and delicate balance between the two. It should ideally take place in a gradual manner. And in a way, if you rush these things too much, you create a lot of dislocations and shocks.
There have been serious missteps on the government's part. To give people a new place to invest, Beijing encouraged the growth of the stock market. That backfired when stock prices plunged. Scott Kennedy says there's also a lot of resistance to change within the government.
Giving up authority and power over economic choices is not something that the Chinese government wants to do easily. Your brain knows it, but your heart doesn't necessarily agree yet. I think that's where they are.
But with the global economy slowing down, China has to find new ways to grow, and that means getting Chinese consumers to help pick up the slack. Jim Zaroli, NPR News, New York.
You're listening to All Things Considered on WNYC. I'm Richard Hake. It's 5:47. It's a chilly night coming up. Right now, 37 degrees. We do have cloudy skies, but expect some light rain, maybe some snow as well, and it'll go down into the mid-20s. Stay with us. Coming up, we look at New Jersey's state of the state.
Do you essentially need the U.S. government to write you a check?
That would be great, but I don't think U.S. taxpayers would be very happy with that. I think we need to recognize that it's in the mutual interests of the United States and Kurdistan and Iraq to support us.
It's not just the news, it's your next conversation. Hear it on Morning Edition and be ready to make the most of your day. Listen every morning on WNYC.
WNYC is supported by the Montefiore Einstein Center for Heart and Vascular Care, whose Heart and Vascular Center has been working to create state-of-the-art innovations in cardiac diagnosis and treatment. More information at montefiore.org. Geico, offering auto insurance coverage for cars, trucks, or SUVs and providing 24/7 customer service. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO.
It's All Things Considered on WNYC. I'm Richard Hake. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie stopped in Trenton today before getting on a flight back to New Hampshire for his presidential campaign. He was in town to deliver his annual State of the State address, and Matt Katz of New Jersey Public Radio joins us now from Trenton to tell us what he said. Hey, Matt.
Hi, Richard.
So Christie began by saying, "It's good to be home." How did that go over?
He got a harumph from the back of Assembly Chambers where I was sitting. He's been out of state for all or part of 261 days in 2015, but Christie apparently isn't embarrassed by that fact. He quickly moved on to tout his record as governor, not just this past year, but through his entire governorship. It sounded like a rebuttal against attacks that he's faced from presidential rivals, that New Jersey is a mess. He began by describing the old New Jersey before he got there as this ungoverned hellscape. And then he arrived and he created jobs and delivered balanced budgets and stopped tax increases. It sounded good, and it all might appear in a pro-Christie ad sometime soon. In fact, two of his top campaign ads were in the State House for the speech. Good campaign aids, were in the State House for the speech.
Now, I have a feeling you might have a few facts that dispute some of that telling.
I do. On his watch, transit fares have gone up, tolls into New York have gone up. Local property taxes have gone up every year, even if the increase is slower than in previous years. And also, and this is important, the economy has not recovered like it has in the rest of the country. New York and the country as a whole has gotten back all of the jobs it lost in the recession, but New Jersey has not.
Now, Matt, much of the speech seemed geared toward a national audience. I mean, we were watching it here. He slammed President Obama and Congress for blowing hot air instead of issuing real proposals to fix the nation. So what policy proposals did Governor Christie offer today specifically for New Jersey?
He spent several minutes calling for the abolition of the estate tax, which was applauded by the State Chamber of Commerce, but it applies to very few people, only the wealthiest New Jerseyans. He also wants regulatory changes for charter schools to make it easier for them to expand, and he blasted a proposed constitutional amendment from Democrats that would mandate that he make quarterly payments into the public employee pension system. Pensions are definitely the state's biggest fiscal problem. They're woefully underfunded by the state, and Christie was supposed to have solved this problem back in his first term. In his speech, he employed a little theater and kept making hypothetical proposals about tax increases. Do you want me to raise this tax, or this tax, or this tax to pay for pensions? And he asked for a show of hands and got none. And then he was referring to unions and Democrats, and he said this.
They won't tell you now. The way to the dark of night. It's some smoke-filled back room. And then they're going to take your money. That's what they're going to do.
It was good theater. Afterward, Democratic legislators, though, said he was just playing to the presidential race into New Hampshire with all of this rhetoric.
They're always talking about smoke-filled back rooms.
Yes, New Jersey.
He spent about a quarter of the speech on treatment for drug addiction. Is that also maybe a campaign pitch aimed at New Hampshire?
I've got to give Christie a little more credit on that one. He's actually been talking about drug addiction in his State of the State speeches for years. He announced today that he's expanding a program of recovery coaches. These are former addicts who help people in the hospital who are coming in for drug overdoses and they get them referred to treatment. He also said that we're closing a state prison. Actually, the prison had closed in 2014, but he's going to be turning it into a drug treatment facility. This is a symbolic and definitely unique move. And he said he was putting $100 million in state and federal money toward increasing Medicaid and doctor reimbursement rates for mental health and substance abuse treatment.
And Matt, anything notable that Governor Christie did not mention in the speech today?
Well, there's apparently been those backroom talks again. This is between the governor and the Senate president about taking over Atlantic City's government. The mayor there, a Republican, who already has a state fiscal monitor that he's answering to, he's very upset about this, but the governor made no mention of a possible takeover today. There also looks to be a constitutional amendment that'll be on the ballot in November that would, if approved, bring new casinos to North Jersey, but there was no mention of that. And Christie did not update the state on Sandy recovery. There are still families out there suffering, nor did he bring up the bankrupt fund for road and railway repair. That's a looming issue in the state that Democrats say he's just totally ignoring.
Okay, Matt Katz covers Governor Christie for WNYC, and Matt's biography on Chris Christie called American Governor, that is out next week. Matt, can I get a signed copy?
You got it, Richard. Thanks for the plug.
Okay, Matt Katz of New Jersey Public Radio. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
For decades, people have called for a subway to be built on Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, but little has gotten done. Instead, commuters are forced to crowd onto the only bus line that travels on the 5-mile-long street. Meanwhile, as Andrew Johnson reports, one man has introduced religion into the morning commute.
50,000 riders a day get on board the B46 bus. Anna Robinson is one of them. On one recent evening, she was struggling to get enough space for her and her young child. It was a mess.
It's not even standing room on the bus, and buses pass that's empty, and they don't stop.
On many B46 buses, people stand in the stairwells and in front of a white line at the front. That makes the driver hold the bus, causing more delays. In fact, the Straphankers campaign calls it one of the city's most unreliable bus routes. Private vans also take passengers up and down Utica Avenue and are way faster than the bus, but they cost $2, and they don't provide a free transfer to the subway. But sometimes a totally different kind of vehicle pulls up, a white school bus that doesn't cost a cent.
Free Utica shuttle going all the way to Kings Plaza, making all stop.
It's from a religious organization called the Seventh Scroll.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It's pretty different from the B46. The bus plays Christian music and sermons on speakers and TV screens. For some, like Daryl Thomas, that's a plus.
You got the Lord talking to you right now, you know what I mean? It's a blessing.
Others, like Lisa Reed, don't care. She just wants a better ride than the one from the MTA.
Well, it's a little faster, look like, so I definitely like that. Faster.
Donations are accepted, but are not required.
So that's good. I guess you really can't compare that.
The driver is Michael Edwards. He originally wanted to be an eye doctor because of his family's history of blindness. But in 2011, he struggled to get into medical school.
So I called out to God, and God basically told me audibly that he had a different plan for my life.
2 years later, he bought an old school bus and started to pick up passengers. Since it doesn't look like a regular city bus, the Seventh Scroll raises eyebrows.
Some people say, are you gonna kidnap me? I've seen this in a movie. What's going on? Is this a prank?
Edwards admits that he wants people riding the bus to become Christians. That's why he targets busy routes, not just Utica Avenue, but Flatbush Avenue too some days. but he doesn't force people to convert.
We welcome everyone on the bus, and it's a blessing to actually see the different people that do come on.
The City Department of Transportation says all vehicles must register with the city to pick up and drop off passengers. Micah Edwards says he didn't realize that until WNYC brought it up. He is now in the process to get permission. For some, riding on a religious bus would feel strange. Gene Rushinoff of the Straphangers campaign is one of them. However, he says he would get on board if he was waiting on Utica Avenue and nothing else came.
It's a shame that the community has to rely on the goodwill of an evangelist for adequate bus service when it should be exactly what the city is doing.
But he says one bus won't solve the problem. The MTA hopes to roll out speedier bus service for Utica Avenue soon, and Mayor de Blasio has issued a new call for a subway to be added. For now, riders have free, imperfect choices. The 7 Scroll, Dollivans, or the B46. For WNYC, I'm Andrew Johnson.
36 degrees, cloudy right now in New York City. You can expect some light snow tonight, maybe up to an inch in the northern and western suburbs. The National Weather Service has also issued a wind advisory. That starts at 8 o'clock tonight. Winds could gust up to 50 miles per hour. It will be cold tonight with lows in the mid-20s. Tomorrow, Wednesday, mostly sunny and blustery. Highs expected in the lower 30s. And then Thursday, mostly cloudy, a little warmer. Highs in the upper 30s.